It's officially Raiders week as Denver returns home for their first division game of the 21 season, looking to turn the tide after two tough ones. Can Denver get positive momentum against its most hated rival? We'll preview all of the biggest matchups. Plus, it's the return of the winningest coach in franchise history as Mike Shanahan enters the Broncos Ring of Fame. Plenty of stuff going on this weekend. Welcome into Broncos Weekend, everybody. I'm Matt Boyer, alongside Alexis Perry and the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater, getting his Hall of Fame ring pre-game. Steve, congratulations. How are we feeling about the festivities we're going to be seeing this weekend?
Oh, man, I'm feeling really good about it. I'm so happy and honored to be able to share this day with Mike Shanahan, who's going into the Ring of Fame. I'm so happy for him. Well-deserved and a little bit overdue, I think.
2 p.m., make sure you get to your seats early. This one, guys, Broncos-Raiders, there's always a lot of intrigue. One of the AFC's best rivalries. Both of these teams are 3-2, one game out of first place in the AFC West, and they're also at very different places institutionally as Jon Gruden, of course, the organization reeling from the fallout of Jon Gruden's resignation and the heinous email scandal that we all witnessed last week. It's hard to gauge what state that Raiders team will be in when they arrive at Empower Field Sunday. So as we take a look at our first big matchup of the week, Teddy Bridgewater versus Derek Carr. Steve, Rich Bisaccia, the Raiders interim head coach, offensive coordinator Greg Olsen, though, going to take over play calling duties. Tough to speak of to what type of game plan we're going to see from Derek Carr, but last week he really struggled. Are there any lessons that the Broncos can take from that game last week, apply it to their game plan? Because the Bears seem to do a pretty good job of limiting Carr.
Yeah, well, this may not sound right considering what goes on in a lot of schools, but we got to go out there and we got to take the mindset that we're going to bully the Raiders. We can't go out there with the mindset we're just going to play head up with them. No, we're going to bully the Raiders. We're going to take it to them early, and we're going to keep it going for the full game. Now, what the Chicago Bears did really well, I thought, was their linebackers did a great job of covering Darren Waller and the other tight end, and also the running backs out of the backfield, and they were able to get pressure with four a lot of times, which made it easy to keep the other seven guys back in the coverage. It made it difficult for Derek Carr to complete a lot of passes.
On the flip side, Alexis, Teddy Bridgewater and this Broncos offense, they've been preaching fast starts. That's been the emphasis all week. What are some of the things that you'd like to see them do to kind of get that momentum going early?
The Broncos have to come out, and they have to be the aggressors this week. They really do. They have to come out guns a-blazing, run, pass like we saw last week in Pittsburgh. That's not going to cut it this week because it's too predictable, right? This week, I want to see a go ball to Tim Patrick the very first play of the game. Get back to those deep post routes to Sutton like we saw week 2 against the Jags. Let's get into a rhythm early with the passing game and then use Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams to really balance things out. You know, the Raiders have only scored 34 points in the first half so far this season. So if the defense can hold up their end of the bargain on Sunday, I really think that'll help this offense because then they won't feel like they're playing from behind. They can go out there, they can play their game, they can use Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, and they won't have to abandon the run game in the second half when they're down by double digits.
One guy that I know Teddy Bridgewater is going to be wanting to see a go ball from or a reception from is Courtland Sutton as we take a look at some of the offensive weapons from both the Raiders and the Broncos. Sutton versus Waller. AP, Sutton had another huge game last week. It was his 26th birthday, his second 100-yard game of the year. Where have you seen signs that we should be expecting more of these types of games from him on a consistent basis?
Well, each week we see Sutton on the field is another week that he's removed from that torn ACL, which means that's another week that he is gaining confidence in his knee. As time goes on, that fear, I guess, or the doubt that he might still have in that knee, that will start to fade and he will get back to that Pro Bowl caliber level of play that we've seen from Courtland Sutton. And also, we're going to see a lot more of that chemistry between him and Teddy Bridgewater building. We saw it especially in the fourth quarter against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, but I want to see that version of Courtland Sutton earlier in the game and more often. I think if we can get him involved into the game plan, he didn't have a single target in the first quarter of the game. Unacceptable. Need to see that on Sunday if they want to beat the Raiders.
A guy that we know, Steve, can hurt the Broncos, and you know Derek Carr has chemistry with this guy is Darren Waller. Waller has played exceptionally well against the Broncos in the past. Vic Fangio said this is a guy who's running wide receiver type routes out there on the edge. So when he has hurt the Broncos in the past, what has he done effectively?
Well, they like to line up in trips a lot, and when they want to get a one-on-one situation with a particular defensive back, they'll just line him up to that side by himself, and they'll put the other 3 receivers on the other side, and he'll do his thing. Now, he's run go routes, he's run stop routes, he's run in routes, he's run just about every route imaginable back on that backside. So we got to be ready for that, and knowing that when they get in that trips formation with him isolated by himself, somebody may need to help out, whether it's a safety or a linebacker getting over to that side, knowing that they're going to try to target Darren Waller.
He's going to be the focus for this Broncos defense. As we take a look at the defensive matchup, 2 guys I want to focus on this week is Pat Surtain II and Yannick Ngakoue from the Raiders. Steve, it seems like fans want to see Surtain on Waller. That's the guy. That's the matchup everybody seems to want to see. But PS2's played well on the outside. So if you're Vic Fangio and you're getting Ronald Darby back, who he says will hopefully be available this Sunday, how do you deploy Surtain?
Well, you almost have to do what Von Miller spilled the beans on back earlier in the season. You got to put Patrick Surtain II on Darren Waller. Darren Waller is, I think, the chessboard piece for them that really makes them go. And having one of our best defenders, in my opinion, covering him, he's the guy who matches up really well with them height-wise, speed-wise, the whole 9 yards.
These are 2 great defenses, guys. And Alexis, Yannick Ngakoue last week, 2 sacks, PFF's best edge rusher.
Yep.
And Max Crosby. So if you are the Broncos, how do you limit this talented Raiders front 7?
Well, like we saw last week, the Denver Broncos needed to slow down TJ Watt. So they had Noah Fant chip in protection, which actually was pretty effective, but it took Noah Fant out of the passing game. So I think we will see a variation of that game plan up against the Raiders this week, but I would expect to see more 2 tight end sets this week, given the fact that I really think Noah Fant shouldn't be the chip blocker this week. I think that role should be taken over by Eric Saubert, and then we can see Noah Fant get back to pass catching. And then there's also like the old school philosophy of how to slow down a really great edge rusher, and that is just run right at him. So Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, have at it this week, boys.
I think both of those guys would be just fine if that was the game plan with Williams and Gordon. We've got to take a quick break. When we come back on Broncos Weekend, whether they are traveling from Oakland, LA, or Vegas, these Raider Bronco moments have always been memorable. We'll take a look at some of the best games. Plus, we'll preview Mike Shanahan's Ring of Fame induction. That's next. Few rivalries in football are more historic and heated than the one between the Raiders and the Broncos. In 1960, Denver won the first meeting 31-14 in the Mile High City, with Frank Tripucka finding fellow Ring of Famer Lionel Taylor for 2 touchdowns. The Broncos and Raiders have played 60 times inside the Denver city limits, but only one of those games has been in the postseason. In the 1977 playoffs, Denver beat the Oakland Raiders 20-17, thanks to a pair of Haven Moses touchdown catches and a stifling defensive performance by the Orange Crush. The win gave the Broncos their first AFC championship and a trip to Super Bowl 12. Denver's most dominating performance at home may have come in 1995 on Monday Night Football, when the Broncos shut out the Raiders 27-0, forcing 4 turnovers and gaining 475 yards of total offense. The most recent meetings at Empower Field at Mile High have been nothing short of dramatic, with each of the past 3 meetings being decided by a single point.
Patrick steps down the tackle to 30. Here we go. 25, 20, out of bounds.
In 2018, Tim Patrick's 26-yard catch in the 4th quarter helped set up a 36-yard field goal from Brandon McManus with just 10 seconds left, as the Broncos won 20-19. The next season, it was Shelby Harris's turn to play hero.
4-man pressure. Carr looks to the end zone, throws the ball. That is deflected, and 2-point conversion is nullified.
Harris's pass breakup on the Raiders' 2-point attempt denied Oakland a chance at a win and preserved a 16-15 victory for the Broncos. If Denver can win at home on Sunday, it would give the Broncos a 1-game advantage at home all time, with a 30-29-2 record against the Raiders. Plenty of big moments and drama in this rivalry, and those were just some of the home games that we just saw. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend. Okay, Steve, we saw you figure prominently into that montage. We saw the interception in '95 there. Another guy who figures prominently into this rivalry, of course, is Mike Shanahan, who goes into the Ring of Fame this weekend. What kind of standard bearer was Mike Shanahan for not only coaches for the Broncos, but for the rest of this league?
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, his own version of that West Coast offense with the zone running scheme and all that. The back-to-back Super Bowls that we won, they'll give us all a lot of joy for years to come. But I think even more importantly than that is the coaching tree, the guys that he's impacted and mentored over the years. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, and obviously Gary Kubiak. What an impact he's made on the game of football.
Steve, this Broncos-Raiders game, there's a lot of heroes in this one, and a guy who wants to add his name to that list this week is Kendall Hinton. 1 week after scoring his first NFL touchdown, Hinton is trying to use that momentum to go from being what everybody knows him as, the Broncos' emergency quarterback in 2020, to now a productive, consistent NFL wide receiver in 2021.
This past OTAs, this past training camp was a moment where I'm like, hey, I think I do belong here in the NFL as a receiver. I think I can play alongside these guys. And, man, our receiver room, I'm just so lucky to be in this receiver room.
Play fake. Bridgewater throws in the flat. Catch. Touchdown, Denver. Kendall Hinton. For Kendall Hinton, his first NFL touchdown.
No, Kendall, man, no, he's a guy, he's just quiet, man. He doesn't say much. He just comes to work every day and does everything that we ask of him. He might have to go in there and run 5 go routes in a row and he won't complain, So he's a guy who's very selfless. I think everyone saw that last year when he had to go play quarterback against the Saints. And those are the type of guys we want on this team.
Bridgewater, another one down that same sideline. Did he get 2 in? Kendall Hinton, yes, they say he caught it.
Every day I wake up and it's crazy I'm playing in the NFL. This is such a blessing, such an honor. So yeah, every day is wild. This journey continues, and through all the bumps in the road I'm so appreciative of where I'm at now. I'm willing to play, wherever I can to help the team, to make the team better. I have fun on the football field, so it doesn't matter what position, where I'm at. I just want to play football.
Steve, Hinton's made a lot of progress, and Vic Fangio has been very consistent in his praise for Hinton. But for this team, how important is it that they find that third wide receiver option with Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler? I imagine Hinton would figure into that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think it's extremely important that we find that person. And, yeah, we're all hoping that Jerry Jeudy makes it back here relatively quickly. I think that Noah Fant has been that third receiver up to this point. I think the type of receiver we need has to be a burner, a guy like a John Brown. I think Kendall Hinton may have that type of speed, but we need a guy who the opponents know that he can run past the defenders and they fear him. And we got to throw the ball to him sometimes. We got to make the defenses know that we're going to put it up. Your defenders are going to have to be good. You're going to have to defend the deep pass against us.
Speaking of defending, last week, Steve, the Broncos' rush defense was not great. They allowed over 100 yards rushing to Najee Harris, and now they face a running back in Josh Jacobs who has averaged over 5 yards a carry against them last year. So how does Denver get this rushing defense corrected here for this Raiders game?
Well, again, we got to go in there with a bully mentality. We got to go in there and take control. The defensive line is going to have to give more push. Now, I like to see us rush 5 a little bit more than we do, but the 4 guys up there, they have to be more impactful. They're going to have to be stronger. We got held quite a bit last week. When we get held, we got to raise our fists up and let the refs know that we're getting held so they'll call those penalties on the offense. But I think we'll come out and play much better than we did last week.
They got to bully them just like 27 used to whenever the silver and black come to town. We got to take a quick break, but when we come back on Broncos Weekend, Alexis is chatting with DNVR's Ryan Koenigsberg about how the Raiders might look when they arrive Sunday and why the key to victory for Denver might be those early down situations. That's next. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. For a localized look this week at this Broncos-Raiders rivalry, Alexis Perry is chatting with DNVR's Ryan Koenigsberg about why the Broncos, when it comes to improvement on offense this week, the most important snap might be the very first one to Teddy Bridgewater.
Thanks so much, Matt. Ryan, Raiders week started with a bang with the news of Jon Gruden's resignation. So how do you think this shakeup in Sin City will impact this game on Sunday?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Sometimes a new coach can kind of refresh a team. I think in a situation like this one, you're kind of getting a little bit of a situation where how are the players going to trust these other guys? You know, they're obviously looking at Jon Gruden saying, man, I can't believe I trusted that guy. But this coaching staff is, you know, an amalgamation of Jon Gruden's friends. And so I have to assume there's a bit of a trust issue there with those players saying, hey, I don't know if we can trust these guys either. So I think it's going to make a big difference in this game. I think that the Raiders are going to be a little bit discombobulated, and I think it helps the Broncos. Whereas if Jon Gruden had just been fired for underperforming and maybe, you know, a young coach gets promoted and the players want to play for him, that might help the Raiders. I think this one helps the Broncos.
Well, Teddy Bridgewater and Derek Carr will be going head-to-head this week. Derek Carr, he has not been as effective these past 2 weeks as he was the first 3 weeks of the season. So was there something specifically that you could pinpoint that the Bears and Chargers did that maybe the Broncos can try to replicate this week?
They could. It's not really Vic Fangio's style, but what they wanted to do was, you know, take away some short stuff and then get pressure without blitzing. It's really the best way to succeed in any football game on a defensive standpoint. But the Broncos kind of like to play that zone. When they play Derek Carr especially, they kind of like to just let him have the short stuff. They know that he wants to go short. That's his tendency, is to go short. Normally what the Broncos do is they play bend, don't break with Derek Carr, and it can be really frustrating. I think there was a game when he went 19 of 21 or something against this defense, but the Broncos won that game. So you kind of lull him to sleep and keep him short, and then try and bow up in the red zone, which is obviously kind of Vic Fangio's specialty.
Well, offensively for the Denver Broncos, getting off to a faster start and playing with a sense of urgency has been the key message throughout this entire week. But what does that look like, in your opinion?
It's a really good question, and it's been a problem for this team. They have not got off to great starts, especially in the last 2 weeks, although they did get the lead on the Ravens. I think for them, it's about going out there and being creative offensively to start. You know, so many teams, especially for us, you know, who watch the Broncos, we think back to the Mike Shanahan era, and they always came out with such a great script. And obviously Mike Shanahan getting honored. Maybe the Broncos can honor him by coming out with a great script. It's been the entirety of the Pat Shurmur era. They haven't scored a touchdown on their first drive of the game. Come out with a great script, have some creative plays, maybe a trick play, maybe a shot play that you connect on, or at least get a penalty on. I think that is going to be huge for them. That script can be a really valuable team for a team that gets off to slow starts. If they can figure out a way to put together a nice script with some interesting plays, some interesting formations that the Raiders haven't seen, I think that'll go a long way to getting this team rolling.
The Broncos have really struggled on third down this entire season. What needs to change on first and second down specifically to help this team get in more third and manageable situations?
I really think it's creativity. I really think they have to get a little bit deeper into the bag and not just think, oh, if we just run the ball, you know,
pass.
Yeah, exactly, the run passing. But even if you're going to go run pass, don't just, you know, run out the A-gap. Maybe come with a counter, maybe come with a toss, a little something that's different. You know, use some pre-snap motion to try and open up things in the middle a little bit. I feel like the run game has been like just too base. You know, you need to give the defense a little bit of a different look and allow these guys to get 3-4 yards. You know, you look at the rushing yards per carry and you say this team has done a pretty good job of running the ball. But when you break it down to the success rate and all those advanced analytics, they'll tell you the Broncos aren't getting what they need to on first and second downs. We know that this team can run the ball. We know that these running backs can get these yards. I think you need to give the defense some different looks on those runs and catch them off guard.
Well, speaking of the Raiders defense, we cannot go throughout this entire show and not mention Crosby and Ngakoue. They're going to look to make Teddy Bridgewater's life absolutely miserable this Sunday. How can the Broncos limit that?
Yeah, I think you're going to try to get the ball out quick, and that's something that Teddy Bridgewater does a really good job of. You know, you can kind of spread the defense out, allow him to make some reads, some quick slants, you know, get the ball to Courtland Sutton on, you know, a little tunnel screen, those sort of things to kind of slow down that pass rush. Get Javonte Williams out of the backfield on the screen. You know, make those guys think twice before they just tee off on those tackles out there. And then you're going to ask Garrett Bowles to play like the, you know, the contract that he was given in this offseason. You're going to ask Bobby Massey to be that type of guy for you on the outside where you can say, hey, we need a big stop here. We need to trust you guys. But Crosby especially is a freak. And he's going to give them problems. I just think you have to make them think a little bit more than just being able to pin those ears back and go.
Obviously, these two organizations are in two very different places heading into this week's game. But who needs this win more?
I think it's definitely the Broncos. Okay. I really do, and especially this coaching staff. You know, there's a lot of pressure on them. For Rich Bisaccia, there's no pressure on him. He was thrown into this role. No one expects anything of him. And the Broncos have a coaching staff that's in their third year. There's a lot of expectations, especially on Vic Fangio, especially on Pat Shurmur. People are looking for them to get things turned around. I think the Raiders can kind of play freely, and that is a little bit of a dangerous thing for the Broncos. They cannot come out tight because everyone knows, they can talk about how they don't hear this, but they do hear it. Everyone is talking about this as a must-win game. You cannot start 3-0 and fall all the way back to 0-3. So the Broncos have to be smart and not let that pressure get to them, but I think they absolutely have more to lose and they need this one more.
Ryan, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Ryan Koenigsberg and check out DNVR for some awesome content that these guys are putting out. Matt, let's send it back to you.
Thank you, Alexis. Okay, Steve, let's get to your keys to the game. We are celebrating you and Mike Shanahan this weekend, so the spirit is high, the energy is going to be high this weekend. But how do the Broncos make sure they get a win on the field this week?
Well, we touched on it a little bit earlier. I think first off, as a defense, you gotta slow down Darren Waller. You cannot let him come in here and have a 100-yard game. He's had 9 100-yard games over the last 2 years. 2 of them, again, have been against the Denver Broncos. We can't allow that to happen this game.
Steve, I think the key lies with the defense. Von Miller's a guy, Steve, that if he plays well this week, I think the Broncos can get a win.
How many sacks?
He only needs 1.
Okay.
In the last 3 meetings at home, he's registered at least 1 sack against the Raiders. Now, Pittsburgh last week, they had some success against chipping him and running towards his side. That rarely happens 2 weeks in a row for Von Miller. So, if Miller can get pressure like he has against this Raiders team in the past, I think they can get a win for you on Sunday. What do you think, Steve?
I got to go with you, man. You've been right here the last few weeks, so I got to go with you on that.
That sounds great. All right, that'll do it for us on Broncos Weekend. For the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater, I'm Matt Boyer. So long, Broncos country. We will see you next week.